PACOM's job is be prepared to fight China. So then they sit down and say, what do we need to fight China? Do we have, do we have all of the necessary weapons we need to do that? And I think the messages coming back from UCOM or PACOM are going, good God, we're running out. We don't even have enough to carry out our mission.
The headlines focus on missile strikes, military deployments, and the possibility of another confrontation with Iran. But according to former CIA analyst Larry Johnson, the real story may lie behind the weapons being launched, not the targets they're hitting. He argues that every interceptor fired and every precision-guided missile used today comes from inventories that cannot be replenished overnight. Behind the scenes, military planners must weigh not only today's battlefield, but tomorrow's potential conflicts as well. Because Iran may be the immediate challenge. But what happens if another crisis erupts involving Russia or China before those stockpiles are rebuilt? That, Johnson believes, is the question shaping decisions in Washington.
Well, the shortage is not going to be resolved anytime soon.
No, exactly. It's the shortages. Not just of the interceptors, it's the shortages of Tomahawks, JASSM. All these precision missiles, when they use them, they're not being replaced. And the replacement is maybe 3-4 years away. And so Kane is not just focused upon Central Command, he's also focused on Pacific Command, PACOM. He's also focused on European Command, EUCOM, because they each have specific. EUCOM's mission is with respect to Russia. And so they've got to be prepared to fight Russia. I mean, that's their job. PACOM's job is be prepared to fight China. So then they sit down and say, what do we need to fight China? Do we have do we have all of the necessary weapons we need to do that? And I think the messages coming back from UCOM or PACOM are going, good God, we're running out. We don't even have enough to carry out our mission.
Yeah. Larry, we had the war happening, the escalation between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. I thought last night that they're not going to go that far attacking Aramco.
You talked last night to who?
I thought that the response on the part of Yemen, I was thinking of Aramco. I said if they want to escalate drastically, they will attack Aramco. If they want to go little by little, escalate in the war, they're going to attack on the pipeline, on the port, in the Red Sea. But they attacked both of them last night.
No, actually, my understanding, they didn't attack Yanbu. There were reports that, but not confirmed. So if you saw confirmation, fine, but I haven't seen that.
No, I haven't seen the confirmation.
But they did take out the Aramco facility, Jinza, and that's the world's. My understanding, it's right now the world's most sophisticated petrochemical refinery. And so the damage they've done, the report I heard today said it's going to be at least 4 months before it's back up and operating, assuming there are no more attacks on it. So, the Houthis really, they delivered a big kick in the balls to the Saudis. And the Saudis are now like, okay, what are they going to do? Because if the Saudis double down and try to go back and attack now, hit the port at Hodeidah. They bombed at Hodeidah, but claimed that they didn't hit the port. They hit other structures. But if they try to take out Hodeidah, then Iran's next shot will be there are two refineries at Yanbu, north and south. They take those out, then those oil terminals are shut down. And I said refineries, I meant oil terminals. Those terminals are shut down and there's no more oil coming out of Saudi Arabia. Not through the Strait of Hormuz and not through the Red Sea. And that will further exacerbate global oil supplies. And I think, frankly, that's another issue that's weighing upon Trump, because I just received a little bit ago a report from an energy expert who's a consultant in the Persian Gulf. Let me give you his bottom line, that it is the U.S. military is stealing America's diesel and jet fuel safety margin. The government is pulling critical fuel out of depleted domestic systems, moving it through opaque military and overseas channels, and leaving the American economy with the shortage risk. And there are 6 findings. Number 1, the U.S. military is stealing the domestic fuel cushion. Priority procurement, military inventory issues, foreign military programs, and exports feeding overseas hubs all pull from the same strategic fuel pool. The labels differ, the economic result does not. Fuel is taken from the domestic safety margin, transferred into the war machine. That's number 1. 2, the theft is occurring inside a verified shortage. From May 1st through July 17th, there were 161 million barrels of oil of distillate and jet fuel left in the United States. 1.9 million barrels every day. So let's call it 2 million. The national distillate stocks were 22% below the 2015 to 2019 norm. East Coast stocks were 51% below. Washington exported critical fuels while the East Coast held less than half of its former cushion. 3, Rotterdam is the shadow handoff. April records show that 8.6 million barrels of oil were sent to the Netherlands. Of that, 8.8 million barrels of distillate and 0.644 million barrels of jet and 0.003 million barrels of kerosene. Nearly all Dutch-bound distillate was less than 15 parts per meter. Rotterdam is a transshipment hub. The public U.S. trail stops before the onward buyer and final user. 4, the military accounting system hides the destination. Public data merged Jet A and JP8, so these are 2 different aviation fuels. Qualifying armed service shipments can be EEI exempt, and no public ledger reconciles commercial exports with military issues, foreign deliveries, and operational consumption. 5, U.S. taxpayers are subsidizing Israel while America runs short. Washington maintains an active JP8 procurement vehicle for Israel inside a taxpayer-backed military assistance system. Direct deliveries are visible. Additional Dutch routed supply is likely. The government does not disclose the exact indirect cargoes. And then finally, the war machine gets the fuel, America gets the damage. U.S. trucking, rail, agriculture, heating, civil aviation are left with depleted buffer and the disruption risk. Military and foreign operations receive priority access. This is not ordinary trade because, beside a healthy reserve, it is a military-directed transfer of strategic fuel away from the American economy. So all of that combined may be what has also given Trump pause to continuing the military strikes.
This is where the conversation shifts from tactical decisions to long-term strategy. If Johnson's assessment is accurate, the question isn't simply whether another military strike is possible. It's whether using valuable resources today could limit America's ability to respond somewhere else tomorrow. Modern conflicts aren't measured only by battlefield success. They're also measured by how quickly nations can replace what they consume.
So you actually already had the answer to your question when you read the New York Times article about what General Keynes said. That, hey, we're running short. I mean, this is something I've been saying, for the last 2 weeks, that the United States had a limited capability of what it could do to continue blasting Iran. It does not have unlimited supplies. And it's not just with interceptor missiles, it's with their precision missiles, the Tomahawks, the JASSMs, the ATACMS. They've got limited range to start with. as well, and the PRSM, the precision strike missile. Forget about that. They're out of that now. So, and that's why Kane said, "Hey, okay, yeah, we can do it, Mr. President. Yeah, if that's what you want to do. I'm not telling you no, but just be aware we're running down our stocks to critical levels, and we might, if we had to get into a fight with China or Russia, we're going to be tapped out." That's essentially what he was saying.
Is Yemen going to resolve the siege on Yemen? Are Houthis going to be able to resolve the issue of the siege with this new move on their part?
Oh, they certainly put pressure on Saudi Arabia to consider a diplomatic option. Again, I would argue, just like with the United States, Saudis don't have a good military option with the Houthis. I mean, hell, the United States tried to defeat them. It couldn't. We spent 18 months. The first 14 months under Biden until Trump took over on January 20th. And then Trump, with big, announcement, oh, we're going to teach those Houthis who's boss. And so they started the operation in March, went through April, and first week of May, they called it off. They did it for 7 weeks, and it was too costly. They lost almost $500 million worth of MQ-9 Reaper drones in 7 weeks. That whole operation cost well over $1 billion in terms of both the lost Reapers, lost aircraft, other munitions expended, damage to ships. Not to mention, it was during that period that at least 2 Navy SEALs drowned. So, yeah, it was costly. And remember, Trump tacoed. He declared victory, declared the Houthis had submitted. They said, "Oh, we can't keep this up," and the U.S. pulled out. Well, the Houthis didn't capitulate. That was the term. Trump said, "Oh, the Houthis had capitulated." They did no such thing. That was just an excuse that Trump came up with to justify pulling U.S. forces out. So now you want to make the case that the Saudis are more militarily competent than the United States? Good luck with that argument.
Yeah, but they have their proxies in Yemen, and right now, as we talk, there are heavy gunfire going on in the northern part of Yemen between Houthis and the groups and the pro Saudi Arabia, and they're part of the presidential leadership council tribes.
Yeah, but that's meaningless. I mean, it's not, if you're one of the frontline soldiers for the Houthis getting shot at, yeah, it's meaningful, but it's not going to change anything. Hell, they had 10 years to try to defeat the Houthis and failed with those guys. What, they've suddenly become Superman? Nah. So, if they escalate much on that front, you'll see the Houthis will say, okay, they may even send a warning to the Saudis, basically, cut this shit out or else. Or else what?
One lesson from recent conflicts is that military costs accumulate quickly. Even against smaller adversaries, sustained operations require continuous resupply, maintenance, and replacement of expensive equipment. If advanced systems are being used faster than they can be produced, policymakers must consider not only today's mission, but whether enough capability remains for whatever challenge comes next.
So, the United States got, suffered some real economic. I mean, I'm talking almost $500 million, almost $500 million worth of just with 7 drones, because the airframe on the drone is between 30 and 35 million. And then when you put the pods on, the optical pods and the weapon pods and, whatever other pods they put on and attach to it, that adds like another $35 million to it. So each of those drones cost between $60 and $70 million. You take those out, do the math. If it's $70 million, 7 of those, that's $490 million. Boom, gone. And it's not like they've got a factory back that's just spinning them out every day. No. Why? Because like we talked about last night, rare earth minerals. You need those rare earth minerals in those bad boys. And they don't. China's sitting there going, we're not giving you any more.
They used these missiles that they used to attack Saudi Arabia. They're domestic. They produce them domestically, Larry. They're basically the versions of the Khaybar Shikan and Zulfikar, the Iranian Zulfikar and Khaybar Shikan, but they're domestic. They were, the versions.
Yeah.
These missiles were produced in Yemen. They have used their missiles, and the what is interesting to me that there was no, at least what we've seen, there was no air defense system in Bahrain yesterday. In Kuwait, Iran hit the targets without having any sort of difficulties from interceptors or air defense system in those countries. I assume it was the case with the case of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, they've been wiped out. Look, I wrote a piece 2 months ago that I went and detailed what the PAC-3, the quantity of PAC-3s, because at the end of 2025, so now 7 months ago, there were a total of 6,200 that had been produced since 2015. Well, at least 2,000 of those had been sold to allies, foreign countries. So that took it down to 4,200. Then they used at least 1,000 in Ukraine. So that took it down to 3,200. Well, how many did they use during the 12-day war last June? I'm willing to bet that was another 1,000. Then how many have they used during this, 45-day war, 6-month war now? I think 1,500, 2,000. So all of a sudden, they're on fumes. And it's not like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon were producing, more PAC-3s. In fact, you saw, Raytheon announced, we're going to go back and start building the PAC-2 missiles. Well, those are far, far less effective against ballistic missiles. You set them up, they explode fragments, and you hope it hits something. That missile's, it's almost as old as you. You're a little bit older. It's 36 years old. Okay? So it's not like it's the most modern weapon out there. And this is, so the United States is in the process of discovering we got limits to what we can do.
So maybe that's the main reason. Because they don't have anything to defend Israel, to defend Jesus.
I think General King came in, he probably had a more stark assessment for Trump. I mean, it got cleaned up for the New York Times. Yeah, we might be at a shortage. You might want to think about this. No, I think he went in and said, sir, if we do this, man, we're going to strip ourselves bare ass naked. And, I used this. Pepe and I did a broadcast earlier today on our Transition Protocol channel. And I said, think of Saudi Arabia as a fat, naked man in a nudist colony. And think of Yemen as a porcupine. Do you want to be a fat, naked man trying to catch a porcupine? That porcupine can launch those spikes and it hurts. You don't want any part of that.
Throughout this interview, Larry Johnson presents a broader argument about modern military power. His central point isn't that the United States lacks military capability. Rather, he argues that sustained power depends on production capacity, logistics, industrial output, and the ability to replace sophisticated weapons after they're used. Iran may represent today's challenge. The campaign against the Houthis illustrates how quickly prolonged operations can consume valuable resources. And the possibility of future tensions involving Russia or China raises an even larger strategic question. Ultimately, Johnson suggests that the most important decisions may not be about whether military force can be used, but whether it can be sustained across multiple crises without exhausting the resources needed for the next one.